entrepreneurship. Woo! Glory to God. This is exciting. All right. So let's do this. Super excited. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. All right. So here we are. We are ready to go. So I'm super excited for today. This is the first episode of Better Than Therapy. And who better than the first person to be on the episode is the person who actually inspired the name, right? I was having a conversation with Charlene one day, and she was like, man, this is better than therapy. So welcome, y'all. You would have listened to a pre-episode before this telling you what we are here doing on Better Than Therapy. This is a safe space. This is a community for entrepreneurs who are on their journey, whether you're on your journey between, oh, I lost my screen there. Whether you're on your journey between going in the creating space, ideation space, launch space, growing space, or scaling space, or you're getting ready to contemplate what it would be to exit, to have an exit strategy for your company. We are here to have the raw conversation, not the things to sound like the gurus, right? Because how many times, let me raise my hand before I finish asking the question. How many times have we wasted money joining mastermind, joining retreats, joining coaching program, joining communities, listening to podcasts, and it was so motivating, but there was nothing really applicable to it, right? You were like, okay, this is great. They're amazing. Wow. And you get back to your desk and you're like, what do I do with that information? Right? What do I do with get up and have a cold bath? Well, after I've had a cold bath, I still don't know the next step to grow in my business. And, you should just join that mastermind. Well, I've joined the mastermind, but I don't know how to apply the strategies that I need for scaling. So without further ado, today we have Charlene Lee, one of the co-founders of one of my favorite brands. Actually, I'm going to grab my snacks, and it's called Eatables. So Charlene, I want you to take a minute and introduce yourself to my audience, please.
Hi, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be able to speak with all of you. My name is Charlene, and my company Eatable Popcorn is actually owned by myself and my husband. We went into business together, and the company started back in 2019 when the two of us were really just at home and looking for a nice housewarming gift to bring to our friend's place. And my husband and I actually bonded in a wine tasting class when we were dating. So good food and good drink has always been a part of our story. And we couldn't find anything that we were excited about in a grocery store. All the sweets were kind of laced with artificial flavors, ingredients, what have you. And then all the healthier stuff wasn't very exciting in terms of flavor profiles. So what we did is we went home to our kitchen stove and we pulled a cookbook recipe for stovetop caramel. And my husband Vince had the idea of throwing in a shot of single malt scotch into this handcrafted caramel recipe. We covered some popcorn with it and baked it in the oven. And that was the kind of happy accident that started Eatable. And ever since those early days of throwing up a Shopify store back in 2019, fast forward through a global pandemic and just us being here today, we are now available in over 1,600 retail doors across Canada and the US. And we've even had the opportunity to collaborate with some really amazing household name brands, including the 95th and 96th Oscars, which happened this year. So I'm so thrilled to just be able to speak with all of you and just share my journey with y'all.
Okay, let's jump in. So since you went ahead and mentioned them already, By the way, I was trying so hard not to open them
I see
until
one.
girl, there's more. I opened so many of them. Like I couldn't stop. Okay. But I have a little bit of self-discipline. I want to say, this brand has been around, this company has been around for 5 years. And over the 8 episodes that we have, I hope to bring you guys to where she went from ideation to literally growing with the help of her husband and her team to now in the process of scaling, right? But for you to see a quality packaging, I go to the supermarket every day, right? I'm the number one spender in my household, right? My daughter is number 2 and my son is number 3 because they do spend money over here. And so when I go to the supermarket, I can tell you I've seen packaging. This is top tier. And it's not because you're my friend. Secondly, I don't like popcorn. I can go downstairs right now and bring you a large tin that I got for Christmas from my favorite person, or one of my favorite persons, actually, Dawn. She gave it to me for Christmas. Love the popcorn as much as I could, but I'm not a popcorn person. But I went on a retreat recently, and Charlene was at the retreat, and it was hosted by Mama Lotta, a mutual friends of ours. Crystal Lee, and one of the gifts in the gift bag was one of the popcorn from Eatable. And I remember it was a smaller packaging than this, and they were partnering with Oscars this year. And it literally was just like, are you kidding me? This cannot be popcorn. Okay. And so we're going to get into packaging. We're going to get into different branding, how you got into different markets, different flavor, that you went into, how you got into that space and all of that as we talk about growing. But I just want to tell you guys, if you haven't already heard of Eatable, okay, insane. Okay. Before I go further, because I have to say this. There's some champagne flavors, right? So there's no alcohol in it. And we'll go into that in another episode. But as I ate the popcorn, when you bit into it, it popped. So remember when we were kids and you had these pop-in things? What's the candy called?
Pop Rocks.
Pop Rocks. Listen, it had like little baby Pop Rocks on the popcorn, but it's so tiny, you can't tell the difference. And so it's like there's these little pink things on there and it just pops in your mouth. And it's just like, oh my God. And so I just kept opening and there was another one. It was also popping. And I just want to encourage you guys, no fluff, no hype. This is really all that. I literally was on a ship in the middle of off the coast of California when I opened the first bag. And I remember knowing to myself, I cannot finish this. I need to savor it. And savor it. It lasted me for 3 days. I tried, and I did Hustle One from Crystal Lee. But that was it. And I thought to myself, oh my God, I have to get more of these. So thank you very much to my friends over at Eatable. If you guys haven't already and you're hosting a party, if you're doing anything and you don't have Eatable there, if your company is hosting, if you're giving gifts to your clients and you don't have Eatable, you might want to look into that. All right, so we're going to shift modes a little bit. So you did a real brief introduction. You're from Canada. And, you are not, I would say you are first generation Canadian, correct?
Mm-hmm.
How is that?
My parents both immigrated from Hong Kong.
Your parents, okay. One of my best friends when I was at Ernst & Young, actually, and she was in my wedding, was from Hong Kong, or is from Hong Kong. So, love y'all. Anyways, so talk to me about what it has been for you in terms of not just being a woman, but also being a woman who is a descendant of immigrants, specifically your first generation immigrant. How has that impacted your mindset in you seeing yourself as a business owner? Because a lot of people tend to assume certain groups of people, it's going to be easier for them because clearly entrepreneurship just runs in their blood.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can tell you that was definitely not the case for me at all. I think a lot of what motivates families to emigrate from wherever they're from is just this pursuit of a better life, expecting that, wherever you end up living, you're going to have more opportunity. Perhaps it's education, perhaps it's job opportunity. And for my parents, they came here to Canada with the objective of having a better education than what they were getting there. So not all women at the time in my parents' generation were able to go to school or even work. And when they came here, they were able to pursue post-secondary education. And my mom was actually one of the few women in her family that ended up being a working mom. A lot of women at the time chose to be stay-at-home moms for, cultural reasons or other reasons, what have you. But, they came here and they sort of did a lot of formative years in their adulthood here in like sort of this westernized system. So a big part of what they were seeking as well was stability. And at that time, probably one generation before us, there was immense value in getting a good education, finding a good job, perhaps working for the government or, a large company, and then being, spending a good chunk of your career there. Whether it's climbing up the corporate ladder or just like feeling safe that you had a good job at a big company that offered benefits and you could put food on the table, raise a family, send your kids to, to school, give them the best foot forward in life. And that was sort of, the parents' standard of like a job well done. So I think there was a big focus when I was growing up on education, going to post-secondary education, pursuing an undergraduate degree of some sort. And, what they valued in my family was some sort of professional degree. So I had lots of cousins who became doctors or lawyers or something that gave you some letters behind your name. And then, that was perceived to set you up really nicely in life for like a high paying salaried position and all that. So I sort of grew up with that in the back of my mind, just find the letters I wanted to have beside my name and go through my schooling, come out of schooling, and, that was it. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do in life. Like, I was sort of somebody I would consider myself naturally kind of artsy. I liked drawing and anything like sort of that type of nature growing up. So I think naturally I fell into business because arts in my family was perceived as a career that maybe was challenging to make money in. That was sort of the perception in my household. That's very far from the truth today. But at the time, I was not encouraged to pursue that as my career choice. So I fell into business because I thought it was sort of a general field of study that was transferable across many different industries. So I then was very active in my school community. I joined a lot of clubs. I was on like student councils and such. And at that time, the big four accounting firms were recruiting very heavily on campus. So I was one of the ones that was fortunate enough to get a summer internship after my third year of undergrad. And so after that, I had the safe the safe relief of not having to worry about finding a
The
job after
guarantee,
graduation.
right? We were guaranteed to have a job
Exactly.
upon. Yeah, I had like
Exactly.
6 offers by the time I was in my junior year. And so, you could pick a job. And while people were scrounging, like now I hear people saying they're graduating, they don't have a job. I hear people complaining about getting a degree because they've never been able to get a job. And we never had that issue. Like if you went to Wall Street, you were guaranteed to have a job a year to 2 years. If you went to if you went to the big four, which is consulting, you were guaranteed to have a job. And so that was a path that I knew it was either going to be one or the other, right? Because I was doing both along the way. But I love this for you, right? You came and as the first generation, seeing what your parents had sown and what they had gone through, you decided, I'm going to play by the rules and I'm going to choose the letters that are closest, even though I don't know what I want to do. I'm going to make sure that I guarantee myself a way forward. Even though what I really want to do is frowned upon, I am going to ignore that for now and I'm going to go forward. But like many of us, you realized that, it's suffocating. Waking up every day, getting dressed, even though the job is well respected, even though we're usually working with Fortune 50 and Fortune 100 companies, even though you are working on some of the most challenging things, people are seeing it on CNN, MSNBC. Everything we work on is typically the things that people talk about in the news. You are literally seen, not, you don't feel seen, you don't feel valued, right? Even though it's the most valuable career, if you're not in it because it's for you, you don't feel seen and you don't feel valuable. So talk to me about the inflection point for you where you knew, this is not for me. I cannot stay here anymore. I have to build something that is more authentic to my voice, more authentic to my desire. And what were the steps that you took next? I know it's a very compound question.
So, I mean, I always considered myself kind of a black sheep going through this sort of set path that typically a lot of accountants take as they embark on their journey and they do the articling and they get the hours and the designation. I struggled a little bit actually going through my exam. So that was kind of like the first sign where I'm like, this is not really easy, but you know what? I'm gonna, just persevere and get through it. And when I finally did, I did my articling. And then after my articling period was done, I took the first chance as possible to get out of the firm and go into industry. And because of my audit background, after qualifying, I picked a big bank to work for. And I remember there was a time I was sitting in my corner office, like a glass office, a nice view of Bay Street, like the Canada's Wall Street, essentially. And it was just coming off a really stressful year end. And I was there late at night and just playing with spreadsheets. And I saw people walking down the hall, like the VPs and stuff in my department. And I just had this really sudden moment, like a panic attack. Like I was just like, what am I doing here right now? Like I just can't envision myself sitting at this desk, looking at another set of financial statements, having to close the books for like another 30 something years of my life. Like I can't, like I got scared. Like it was a moment of panic almost. And at that moment, I sort of was just like, what do I do? Like, I mean, where I got in my career was, like a management level. And there was a very clear path ahead of me. But at the same time, like part of me just craved freedom to do something else. Like I didn't know what that was. I just remember sort of like when I was growing up, I spent a lot of time on my own being like the oldest child in my family. And I would daydream a lot. I would draw, I would sketch, I would like journal. And it was this creative release that I had felt that I was missing for so many years of my career that, when you fear, you kind of hold on to something that maybe it was a memory or a childhood thing that maybe brought you comfort. And for me, it was that I needed to kind of reconnect with what made me happy again, like when I was a kid. So it sort of kickstart this journey of creativity and just exploration that I wanted to kind of get back and get in touch again with other things in my life that kind of brought me joy, not just looking at spreadsheets all day. And it would just so happened at that time, I was planning, I was engaged, I was planning a wedding. And I really fell in love with the idea of graphic design and designing my own invitations and stationery. And so that became my escape from my job. I really threw myself into that process during my wedding planning process. And in the end, it ended up becoming that I did my own invitations, my friends, and we were in that age group where everybody around us was kind of getting hitched. And they were just like, oh, can you do mine? And can you help me with mine? And I was like, sure. Yeah, I'll do that. I started doing some for free. I started building a portfolio. And then one thing kind of led to another where I started meeting like random people in coffee shops with like a book of paper swatches. And then, that became my like accidental escape. Like I felt like I was sort of moonlighting. Like during the day, I would be at the office, like having meetings and doing stuff. And then in the evenings and weekends, I'd be like living this alternate life, like as this other person.
Secret life of an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Yeah. And in the beginning, like it was strange to me because I didn't intend for that to happen. I sort of followed my desires of what I wanted and it happened. But when I was going through it, I didn't feel empowered through that. Like I actually felt like it was a choice that I had to maybe hide from people. Like I was almost ashamed of it.
Wow.
And it's strange to say right now, because I felt this guilt. Like it was almost like here I was, my parents, obviously gave up a lot to move here and give me this opportunity for an education. And I was exactly where I needed to be, but yet part of me was dreaming about something else. And that brought feelings of sort of doubt and guilt. So it almost felt like this was a vice for me. Like I had to do this in secret and not tell too many people,
No, but that is so important, because to the person that's listening to this, and she's probably coming from a background where the women in her family before never worked outside of the home or never had a business. And so there's this challenge or this dichotomy where she desires to finally be seen, finally have something that's hers, but yet feels such shame or feeling of, do I deserve this? Is this wrong? Am I cheating on what people are expecting? Am I cheating on my family, my spouse's expectation on me? Is it selfish of me to want to live this dream? And there's that question, can you have it all? Right? And we've been told, no, you can't have it all. You have to trade something or the other. And that in order for you to be successful, you clearly have to play by these rules. And so for a long time as women, we've been told that you can't be a good woman, a good wife, a good daughter, a good mother, and still be a good businesswoman. So talk to me about what were some of the books, some of the resources that you were able to use to kind of turn that mental, emotional around for you to be where you were at stage one again with a new business, because you ran away from the last business because you weren't able to reconcile. And like I always tell my clients, if you don't deal with the internal stuff, you will run away from something and find yourself back at a place wishing you hadn't ran away the first time, right? And building from zero again. So you ran away, which by the way, no shame, right? Because I can't tell you how many things I've run away from, right? You can fail forward or you can just fail a pause or a period on it. But you decided with the first one, it's a pause, it's a period, and I'm just gonna be gone with it. But here you are going to a friend's party and you found yourself back in a scenario. But in order for that to happen, you have to do some reconciliation internally. Talk to me. What books, what podcasts, what experiences did you have that took you from, I am no longer going to live in the shadows, being ashamed of my dream. I'm going to go after this dream because I deserve it.
Yeah. So in my first business, it was it was a service-based business, a little bit of product. It was service-based, but it was very small. It was myself working with a very small team of like 2 graphic designers. And I had stopped at that time, specifically because I had my first child. So it went on for a couple years. And I felt like after I became a mother, the responsibilities, my world changed, and it became very difficult for me to deal with clients in the way that I would have expected myself to at the time. And we had a lot of talks and with my husband, and it was because that business wasn't seen by us as scalable at the time, which is kind of why the reason I kind of let it fizzle and kind of ran away at that time. And I was like, okay, I guess if I can't make scalable money, I'm going to go back. And at the time I had a chance to relocate to Boston, where I ended up working with another startup. But it was a time that I kind of took to reevaluate like what business should be for it. Like, I mean, do I treat it like a job where I'm supposed to make just as much, if not more money, and put it on the table, and that's kind of defined as success? Or does it matter that, I should feel happy in my career and love what I'm doing? And because of that dedication and love for what I'm doing comes the success. So I went through this period of like a lot of soul searching, wondering if, I was meant to be in business still, like despite spending a couple of years really successful in servicing people. But all I realized and came out of it, I just knew that whenever I could deliver a piece of work to somebody and see the smile on someone's face, or just get that feedback from a happy customer, that was the stuff that lit me up, like from the inside, like in such a way that my career was never able to. And at that time, as I was going through this period of self-exploration, it was the era where, you know, you look at people blogging and making millions of dollars. There was this culture of like, I can go out and become a digital nomad. So I came across books like The 4-Hour Workweek with Tim Ferriss, and it sort of opened up my mind to the idea that you didn't have to be chained at your desk necessarily to make money, or you didn't have to be locked in an office. There are people out there making monies in ways that I've never been exposed to in the past. I just needed an open mind. Or there were people doing work in such a way that is very unconventional. But, you know, if, say, like one of the concepts in that book is the idea of virtual assistants. So hiring outsourced help that could be located in anywhere in the world, with different income like sort of standards. So you could, you know, hire a resource to help you on your team, for say a lower hourly rate than you would pay someone in North America, and you would be helping to provide a very decent living for someone. So it started opening up my mind to different ways of making money, not just through a professional career or like clocking in, clocking out type of thing. And so that was one of the books that kind of opened up my mind, and it sort of just got me thinking, like, I can make money online. And when I realized that, like, sort of the mechanics of what went into digital marketing and online marketing, it naturally kind of led me on this path towards e-commerce. So I thought back to the times in my life where, and this is one of the themes in my life. You always go back and think about what made you happy as a kid, right? Like what did you do before for the sheer joy and fun of it before you had to worry about making money in your life, right? That's the way I sort of looked at the answers whenever I was doing soul searching. One of the things I did was, I had an aunt in Hong Kong who was very successful. She's the one entrepreneur in my life who's super successful and is a role model for me. She did manufacturing for denim, like for large fashion companies. And she would send me these jeans, like these brand name jeans from like Abercrombie and American Eagle, Calvin Klein. And every time she'd visit, I'd have these designer clothes, but I didn't wear them. Like I just kept like one pair, and the rest of them I would sell on eBay. Because I just wanted pocket money at the time to go out and like hang out with my friends. So I kind of thought back and I was like, oh, you can make money online. At the time, it was just for side money. But what if it was enough that I could make a living out of it? So that sort of got me into that train of thought, and which eventually led to open up an e-commerce store, like not sell on eBay, but sell in my own shop.
So we're seeing a lot of dots that are gonna connect over the next couple of weeks. How you went back and found your dream. You figure out what made you excited as a child. I'm also noticing some patterns that, you know, and something that we need to pin for another discussion, which is one of your joy is seeing people's joy when they receive the results from the work you've done for them. So as you begin to scale, the chances of you seeing that joy is going to get less and less. So we're going to have to figure out some other ways to drive your joy so you don't get, you know, amiss or feel like you're back in the corporate world, right? We're going to have to figure out how, as you scale, to identify some other whys that keeps you excited. Also, I love the fact that you recognize that something that's valuable that I have that I don't necessarily value, but others value, I can put it on a platform for exchange to bring them joy while paying for what I desire, right? So you are never worried. You've never had an issue with trading or taking something that you have and giving it to somebody else for their joy in exchange so that you can have what you truly desire. I really love that because it's showing it's the same thing, right? And you said something earlier. One of the reasons, you know, you came out of the business, and that's been so many of us as mothers, is that when your first baby was born, you weren't sure how you were going to be able to keep up the same standard or quality of work. And at the same time, was that business scalable? That's also some of the questions we're going to answer down. What are some key things to set up any business in any industry to ensure that it is scalable? And to be honest, that business is scalable. Now that you've had the experience of growing this business, that business is 100% scalable. And I think now you're aware of that from your experience, right? And what's funny is that you can go back into that business and bring it into these, because now you can literally, when people send invites, they can personalize their invites with Eatable in their invite packages to their bridesmaid, to their groomsmen, to their staff, to their friends for their birthday party. And when we think about things like the popping rose all day, if we want to do a after work thing, if we want to do a girlfriend's date, like literally what you built before literally could be another vertical to come across and be bundled with this. And we'll talk about the importance of that when we're talking about scaling in the future, because there's 15 different methodologies to scale a company. We know some of them is licensing, white labeling, subscriptions, merger acquisitions, doing strategic partnership, just to name a few. So we'll discuss that in yet another episode. But because you kind of jumped right there, I'm going to skip ahead. By the way, guys, I have like 1,000,001 questions for her. But clearly you can see here, we're never going to get through all of them. That's why we created a series for you guys to follow, right? So if you're watching this episode, please know that episode number 2 is really going to build this. We're going to see her move from how did she shift from the mindset in the ideation to actually launching the company. And a very quick question. In your first year of actually doing the business, you did it out of your house, correct?
Yeah, we had to start scrappy. So I literally threw up a Shopify store in 2019 as my way to start selling. But a year before, I threw it up. But I mean, I don't really talk about the prep work that went around behind it. But we actually, this idea of Eatable and our gourmet popcorn started at the time that I was in that transitional phase in my life living in Boston. And my husband had to leave his job so that we could relocate. And it was at that time that he went into like a kitchen, like a community kitchen there, went through this like food incubator program that for people who were interested in starting a food business. And we really thought about it like a hobby at the time, a way to meet people. But
a way to meet people.
It started like
$5 million later, right? $5 million later. It was a way to meet people.
Yeah. So, I mean, we were prepping, like once that idea came and we pitched this popcorn, like this whiskey infused popcorn at a demo day at the end of that program, that was the spark that was like, the product needs to exist in a way that we can get it to more people, because it can't just live in our kitchen. Just at small friends parties, we can't keep this to ourselves. Because in that panel that was evaluating us at this pitch competition, there were buyers from grocery stores, people in the startup financing world. And it wasn't until we received like external validation for this idea that we really started believing that this thing we created was worthy of being sold to other on a mass level. So I think once that idea is planted in your head, your whole world just changes. Like, I can't explain that. Like, it's just, you don't start it thinking, you're trying to look for something to sell necessarily. Like, it started in the most innocent intentions, just as a way for us to meet people in Boston, in a new city we were living. And then because of this series of events led to this eureka moment where we're just like, maybe the world actually needs what we're doing. Like, maybe it's more than just a hobby. So we spent that next year tinkering in like commercial kitchen space. We decided to pack our bags, move back to Toronto, where we're both born and raised, where our families are, and work at it for about a year. We worked in a commercial kitchen space where they ran cooking classes. And so, Paris trained chefs were working out of there. And we would use the space and make these little batches, learn the fine art of tempering chocolate or cooking caramel to the perfect temperature where it starts becoming candy versus caramel, and like all of these things that we never learned in school. And we came out with 3 flavors. And when I threw up my Shopify store in 2019, I put 3 flavors up there and started selling. And I remember the first customer was my dad. Wow. And after my dad bought our popcorn, I remember the feeling of the first person I didn't know that probably found us off social media or something.
Wow.
And that feeling, and I think it was only a $30 order at the time, it was thrilling. It was just like validation, like someone found us and they actually spent real money to buy food that they've never had to try it. And I think like that was the kickstart of like the next phase of like, I'm going to do this. Like, we're going to try, like, we're going to actually do this.
Right.
All I needed was just that little bit of validation to get me
I
going.
want to stop right now and I want you to speak to Charlene 5 years ago. And I want you to, the anxiety that she's dealing with, the frustration that she's dealing with that no one has ever seen, because all they saw were your awards, all they saw were you winning pitch competition, but you've carried her without waiting for validation. Because all I've heard from you so far, which is great, by the way, is something was okay until this external validation, and then this happened, and then this validation, which we all need. But I want you now to validate Charlene. I want you to tell her, based on where you've been, what her decision to do 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago has done for you today, and how you feel about her. I want you to give her some validation for me.
No one's ever asked me that before. But Charlene of 5 years ago, if I could tell you where you are now compared to where you thought you would be when you started, like, you'd be proud. You'd want to get there faster. You would have spent less time being a perfectionist like you are from your upbringing, and making sure your creation was perfect before you released it out into the world, because nobody starts a business thinking that they got the holy grail figured out. Like, you have to almost be comfortable with the idea that you're putting something out there into the world and you're going to be judged for it, and you're going to experience a vulnerability that you've never experienced before, especially if you're a maker, you're creating something, whether it's a course or a product or what have you. Like, you're going to be judged and you're going to be uncomfortable and you're going to question yourself and have doubt. But the fact that you're here right now means that despite all that, it didn't stop you. It didn't stop you from getting better. And if anything, you took those things that made you uncomfortable and you bettered yourself because of it. You chose to go on a journey where you would look fear in the face and not know where you would end up, but you'd still keep taking steps forward anyway. And I would have never thought that I would do that 5 years ago. Like, something though, and I think this is how you can tell that you're meant to be an entrepreneur. Something about that, like, despite you not really knowing or being sure about where you're going to end up in a defined set amount of time, doesn't stop you from trying anyway. And I think like part of, I mean, I'm sure you can relate to this too, Natalie, being like super A type, going through like a corporate career. There's a very clearly defined path to like partnership at an accounting firm, right? Like, you know that if you do X, Y, Z, or maybe you bring in business for your firm, like, it's a track to partnership.
Within X amount of time, you're going to be a partner. Yes.
Exactly. Just put in your time, do whatever it is that they ask you to do, you'll get there. It's just a matter of how long it's going to take you, right? Here is like, I can start a journey and think that I'm going to end up here. But along the way, like, there's no guarantee that I'm going to stay on that path. And there's no guarantee that I'm even going to want to get to my original destination by the time I'm like at point B. Like, I may not want the point Z anymore. So I think it's just that comfort of like understanding you can't be super planned. Like, you can try to plan, but chances are you're not going to follow your plans to the T. Right. But despite that, the desire of your why, which you figure out still somehow keeps you motivated to keep going despite that uncertainty.
Yes. You know, I know we're coming to the close, but Jeff Bezos said it best. He says, be adamant and fixated on your vision, but be flexible in your how. Be adamant and fixated on your why, but be flexible on how, because the version of who you are today, Charlene, has evolved so many times. And I'm hoping over the next several episodes that we'll be able to unpack how many versions of you've had to become in order for you to get to where you are today, and who you're becoming even now for you to go even further. I want you to share with me a couple of your whys. We already know your initial spark was going to a friend's thing, dreaming as a kid and wanting to do the creative thing again. But talk to me about, your why to growing this business, because some people would have gotten comfortable. In fact, some people may have gotten frustrated and gone back to corporate because, like you say, we're type A. There are certain things that are predictable, and that's really helpful for us to say, okay, if I do this, at least I know how much money I'm going to make. I know when I'm going to make it. I know the lifestyle I'm going to live. I know the hours. In entrepreneurship, we don't necessarily have hours at first, right? So why is it that you kept going when you could have cut all strings and gone back to corporate? Why do you even keep going today? Because we have to meet this why every single day we wake up. Every single day we wake up. Sometimes we fire ourselves at least 5 times in a day, and we have to rehire ourselves.
So, I mean, my initial motivation really stemmed from the fact that I wanted freedom from how I spent my time in my life and what I did with that time. But as I evolved into becoming a mom, that desire sort of morphed into, like I need the flexibility of how I manage my time to wear lots of different hats in my life, whether it's like my business owner hat, whether it's my mom hat. I had to have a lifestyle that was kind of conducive to the various roles that I carried in my life. So I had to learn how to work to get something done in like a 45-minute span of time when my baby was sleeping. And I somehow felt freedom in that ability to define my day and my time. And so that sort of kept me going. And now, my kids are 8 and 4 now, 2 kids. And I'm finding that my thoughts are now towards, what is this legacy that you want to leave for your children? Like, what is the example that you want to set for like another generation? So I find that when you first embark on this journey of like making money and supporting yourself, the thoughts are more, how can I sustain myself? Right? Like, how can I put food on the table? How can I live the lifestyle I want with the money I'm making? But eventually, it's about what, not only can I take care of myself, but I got to take care of my family. I got to take care of future generations. So that was a motivation to scale, because I could only do so much with my time to make money for myself and my own household. But what about other households? Like, can I help other households? Can I help my community? Can I inspire others who want to do the same where they are? And I think that motivation of, you could take the same 24 hours in your day and be that much more impactful, to scale your business and scale your impact. That sort of is now expanding me to think bigger. And it didn't start off that way. Like, I think you had to get, you had to go from point A to see a vantage point that gets you to point B, to stand on that mountaintop to see what point C looks like. And it wasn't very linear. And I wouldn't say that I really understood how it would be today. So that's the crazy thing about it.
Any book for the persons who haven't started their business yet and they're still going through, books, communities, resources that you would recommend for this phase, for the person who is at this level at episode 1?
Episode 1. I definitely recommend a book called Dear Female Founder by Lou Lee. It's basically a collection of letters that some very successful women in various different industries are sharing with the former versions of themselves or the future generation, kind of like the same exercise you did for me. Words of wisdom or advice, or just even words of kindness and gratitude to say, you're not alone in your fear. Like, it's normal to feel fear. Don't doubt yourself because of it. So I really liked that book. I also really enjoyed Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. It really opened up the idea of vulnerability in leadership, or just even within yourself. And it spoke to me very heavily, because I was somebody who hid my career choice from my family and my friends for so long. Like, it was, like I said, it was something that I felt ashamed of. I actually didn't tell my family for a year after I quit my job. I was full out lying to them and saying that I was still going to work on Monday. And that vulnerability concept created this shift in myself where I started to become braver in coming out publicly with certain thoughts and half-cooked ideas, just not admitting that I knew everything all the time, but not being afraid to show that. And I think that that vulnerability, Brene speaks in the book about how vulnerability creates connection.
Mhm.
It really caused me to look at my uncertainty in things, like not as a sign of weakness, but actually as a way to connect with people and like find the answers you need. If you can be upfront about what you don't know, like only then can you start to find out and learn and know. So,
Yes. So funny because I had here Dare to Lead as well. I also had Be Your Future Self Now. One of the things that I'd also recommend with persons who have issues with their time is Finish What You Started. So many persons have great idea in their Google Drive that is just sitting there, getting dust. And as AI is coming out, it's actually going to be outdated. So get it out of your Google Drive and get started with it. For persons who have issues with self-image, self-confidence, issues with past trauma, issues with imposter syndrome, I would also suggest The Mountain Is You. A lot of times we're so focused on imposter syndrome that we never get started, and we don't recognize that though the things we identify as imposter, it's not that it's an imposter syndrome, it's that it's a real fear. And all you have to do is answer the fear. A lot of people say, well, why me? Well, answer it. Why you? Or can I really do it? Well, answer it. Can you really do it? And what would it take for you to get it done? Who would it take for you to get this done? So I just want to recommend those, as well as for those of you who have issues with, working your 9 to 5 and starting on the side, you're struggling with time management. I would suggest Atomic Habit and Compound Effect, because that will help you get your time together. You cannot really be a founder if you're struggling with time in your 9 to 5. Struggling with time in your business is going to get worse. It's going to get more amplified and get more overwhelming, because when you have all the time and you have to structure it, if you lack discipline and desire to have discipline over yourself, you're going to see all kind of foolishness popping up. So without further ado, this is the end of episode 1, y'all. Hopefully y'all join us for episode 2. And in episode 2, let me give you a preview. We're going to talk about financial management and profit maximization. We're going to see a shift. Talk about how her first year she did about just under 50,000, correct?
mm-hmm.
And then by within 2 year span, she did multiple 6 figures, right? North of 800,000 within a 48-month period. Okay. How did she go from less than 50,000 and then within a 48-month period go just south of $1 million? What were some of the things that she was doing financially, profit maximization, system wise? We'll touch on that. So if you are watching this later on, you may be able to see the link below with episode number 2. Just go over there and watch it right now. Thank you.